Hey guys, just real quick, I wanted to thank Salvador Villagomez for their generous pledge on my Patreon at patreon.com/SirSpooksALot. Becoming a patron there greatly helps me to put out more content more often and allows me to use better stories. Also, even pledging $1 per month gets you early access to Bullied Part 3, which is the conclusion to that series. Also, I am doing a $50 gift card giveaway. The winner gets to choose whatever kind of gift card they would like. To enter, all you have to do is follow my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/SirSpooksALotYT. I will leave a link in the description. I do want to mention that becoming a regular on my Twitch channel does increase your chance of winning, but everyone who follows the channel will be automatically entered. I will be uploading creepypastas and other stories on my Twitch channel, as well as doing live streams. Thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy the story. Anna was your typical 8-year-old, except for one thing. She was an orphan. She had been in many foster homes, but Mrs. Crawford's was the worst. Mrs. Crawford was a bitter old woman with curly and short black hair, pale white skin, and wide-framed glasses. Her personality went with her looks. She was very strict. No food after 7, be in bed by 8:30, TV rots your brain, read a book instead. Don't go outside, you could get hurt. Mrs. Crawford was awful, and for an active 8-year-old, sitting and reading books like Where the Red Fern Grows and To Kill a Mockingbird didn't satisfy her evolving mind. She had been at Mrs. Crawford's house for a few weeks now, and the only true entertainment she could find was playing with Jackson, a 6-year-old boy who had been adopted by Mrs. Crawford also. He reminded Mrs. Crawford of her late son, who had gone missing 20 years ago, and she was needing some company after her husband had died a year ago. She probably bored him to death, Anna thought. One day, Mrs. Crawford was outside tending to the flowers. Anna saw this as an opportunity to explore the parts of the house Mrs. Crawford had deemed too dangerous for young children. Anna decided to look up in the attic first. She pushed one of the kitchen chairs underneath the attic door and stretched for the string which would unlock a new part of the house. A new part that Anna had been dying to see. "What are you doing?" a small voice asked. Anna looked back and saw Jackson, wide-eyed and wearing his rocket ship onesies pajamas, looking at her. "Go away, Jackson," she spat, still trying to reach the string. "I'm going to tell," Jackson cried. "If you tell Jackson, I'll tell everyone you still wet the bed." Jackson looked taken aback, but kept quiet. Anna finally reached the string, pulling down the stairs and making her way up into the darkness. The attic was empty except a Christmas tree, some old clothes, and what appeared to be a trunk. She made her way over to it, curious as to what kind of wonders it was hiding. When she opened it, a wave of disappointment washed over her, for it was just old books. She shifted through the pile of books when she came upon a long, bright red book. It appeared to be a children's book. The title read, Mr. Darling's Candy Shop, and was written in gold lettering. Her trance was suddenly broken when she heard the front door close from downstairs. Anna quickly made her way back down the attic stairs, pushing them up behind her as she ran back to her room. Jackson was following close behind and asking what she had. When she got to her room, she showed Jackson and said, "You can see it after I'm done." Jackson nodded his head and quickly left the room. Anna was beyond excited. She opened the book and saw an image of a landscape with a barefoot girl in a purple dress standing in front of a store with glass windows. The store was littered with sweets, candies, cookie, and cake, and on the above entrance said Mr. Darling's Candy Shop. The next page featured the girl in the story, surrounded by all the sweets, and who appeared to be Mr. Darling was at the counter smiling. His big blue eyes made his hair look much blacker than it was, and he was wearing a brown shirt, accompanied by a white apron stained with red and many other colors. On the next page, the girl was at the counter eating a cookie, and Mr. Darling was saying, "I love all my children, and my children help me cook." Anna was joyful to have found this book, and continued reading, becoming more and more devoured by the story. Suddenly, the girl was outside, playing with other children on swing sets, slides, and a playhouse. This was like a dream Anna had always had, having friends and a father. Mr. Darling then ran outside, shouting, "I love all my children!" All the children ran in glee and began playing tag. Mr. Darling picked one child up from behind. The child started laughing and smiling while Mr. Darling said, "I love all my children, and they all help me cook." And then quite abruptly, the book ended. Anna began to cry, wanting a life like the one she just read, one full of love, understanding, and friends. Anna clutched the book and cried, eventually falling asleep. Anna woke hours later to the smell of something sweet and nearly didn't believe what she saw. It was the candy shop from the book. Anna pinched herself and tried whatever she could to wake up, but it was all real. She stood up and made her way to the door. While opening it, she heard the bell jingle, which made her smile and let out a little giggle. "Well, who do we have here? A new child to love?" The voice was deep and calm, like a father would sound. Anna smiled even bigger and announced, "I'm Anna." Mr. Darling smiled and gave her a cookie. Anna licked her lips and took a bite. The cookie melted in her mouth. It was so warm and sweet. Mrs. Crawford never allowed her to eat sweets. "Would you like to play with the other children?" asked Mr. Darling. Anna nodded her head, all while her face was covered in chocolate, and made her way through the counter door and stopped before a big metal door. When it was opened, Anna couldn't believe what she was seeing. It was just like the book. Kids, swings, slides, and a tree house, but all the kids were sitting on the ground. She stepped outside and the metal door closed shut behind her. She walked up to a boy sitting on the ground pulling out grass. He was wearing overalls and had dark blonde hair. "Hi, I'm Anna," she said. The boy just looked at Anna before going back to playing with the grass. Anna thought it was weird, but decided to run over to the swings. She took off in a sprint, but it was short-lived when she crashed into something hard. Her whole body hurt, and when she got up, she realized that the slides were just a painting on a wall. Anna became confused, now realizing she was in a small room with fake grass. All the kids were crying, but her investigation was cut short when the metal door opened. Mr. Darling came out smiling as all of the children began to run away screaming. Anna began laughing, knowing he was coming to play. A small boy was in Mr. Darling's grasp, and Anna's smile faded as his grip tightened, and the boy's screams became strained. There was the sound of cracking, until the boy went limp and fell to the ground. Mr. Darling dragged him into the house, as Anna then realized this place wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare. Days passed before Mr. Darling came back and took another child. This time it was the boy who was picking grass when Anna first arrived. Afterwards, Anna had devised a plan. She was going to wait by the door, and when he opened it, she was going to run. A few days passed, and the metal door slowly opened. When Mr. Darling stepped out a few feet, Anna ran. She ran for the counter door, but it didn't move. She heard heavy footsteps behind her and darted for the kitchen. Upon reaching it, she froze. In the kitchen, she saw the mutilated corpses of children, their guts spread across a metal table. but the trance was broken as she felt herself being lifted up and squeezed. Anna felt her air leaving her. She reached for the blood-covered knife on the table and thrusted it into the eye of Mr. Darling. In pain, he dropped her and screamed, "All my children, help me cook! I love all my children!" Blood and pus seeped from his eye as he continued screaming. Anna saw a wooden door and ran at a full sprint toward it, pushing it open, and now knowing what he meant when he said, "All my children, help me cook." All of a sudden, she woke up in her bed. It was late. It appeared to just be a nightmare after all. Anna was still in pain though, and as she lifted her shirt, she saw her body covered in bruises. Anna cautiously made her way downstairs to get some water and try to remain calm, but as she did, she heard crying coming from the living room. It was Mrs. Crawford. "Mrs. Crawford?" Anna asked, making the crying woman jump a little. Anna approached her. "What are you doing awake? Go back to sleep," the woman said, but Anna began to cry and hugged Mrs. Crawford. Mrs. Crawford seemed taken aback, but returned the hug all the same. Anna pulled back after a moment, and Mrs. Crawford smiled at her, tears still falling from her eyes. Anna looked, and on the couch next to her was a picture of a young boy. He looked like the boy who was picking grass at Mr. Darling's. Who is that?" Anna said, stammering, trying to get her words out. "That's my son. He's been gone for a long time," answered Mrs. Crawford. Anna's face turned pale, and she excused herself. She ran upstairs looking for the book, but was unable to find it. And then an idea crossed her mind as she realized where it may have gone. "Jackson!" she exclaimed. She ran to the boy's room, but he wasn't there. Only the book sat on his bed. Anna opened the book, and the barefoot girl in the purple dress was replaced by a boy wearing rocket ship onesies, staring at a candy store called Mr. Darling's Candy Store.